Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome to Podcast of the Rings. I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi. I'm with my friends Alexander Mitchell and Ben Goddard. Ben Godot.
Nope. it's Goddard.
I know. I know. I don't care though. That's
okay.
That's,
as long as it's followed up by have you re-examined your cable insurance bill recently, Mr. Goddard?
Mr. Goddard, what is that?
It's telemarketers. That's how they pronounce.
Is that
they
how
never
they
get
say
Goddard.
it?
They never get Goddard correctly for some reason.
You know I was saying it incorrectly on purpose, right? Okay, good.
Maybe it's because they're all just really big French New Wave cinema fans, and they're like, "Oh, this guy's a Goddard fan."
They're trying to be so pretentious,
right?
My grandmother and my aunt are. My grandmother was a Beatrice. My aunt is a Beatrice, and I think one of the most egregious ones she got was, "Hello, is beet rice there?"
Oh God,
nice. That's a new rap name right there.
Beatrice is good too. Guys, welcome back. Happy New Year. It's been a little bit.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, glad to be back. Happy New Year.
Alex, Alex or Ben, did New Year's exist in the Lord of the Rings, the Middle Earth?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Depending on the calendar, I mean, there were multiple calendar systems. So you have the Shire Reckoning, which had their own system, and then you had
Reckoning
the Gondorian.
was the name.
That's what it's called. SR is the abbreviation. Shire Reckoning, how they reckon the dates and years. So they would have their own calendar system. The Gondorians had their own calendar system. The Numenorians, I believe, had a separate one. So Tolkien was busy at work. Making all kinds of different holidays and celebrations and ways of keeping track of time in Middle-earth.
So speaking of time in Middle-earth, like Durin's Day and the autumn and midsummer, all that stuff falls pretty heavily important in The Hobbit specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Whose calendar are we operating against? Like, is there a standard calendar that is guiding us through this?
That's a good question. I don't know if in the sort of fictional world of Tolkien, there was a calendar system that would later go on to become, the one we use now. I guess it doesn't really make sense because that's sort of the Gregorian calendar, which has its own origins. But I think because we look into the world through the lens of the hobbits, being as it is, Frodo and Sam and Bilbo, and later, Thengel, kings, whatever, who wrote and edited the Red Book, we're looking at it mostly through the Hobbit Shire Reckoning dates,
right,
and then the Gondorian calendar dates. But yeah, the dwarf calendar plays a huge part in this story.
The time, it being that things are time sensitive.
Yeah.
So
and if anyone was wondering, that's what it says on Alex's Hinge profile.
I know. All I could hear was Ben going.
That's what is it on Hinge? It's like you have the prompts that you can reply to, and it's like, everyone would be like, what's your New Year's resolution? And then Alex will respond, well, you see, Thengel in the Third Age is like, technically it's not the New Year. Durin's Day was like 3 months before this. Why am I not getting any matches? This is crazy.
I thought I was really clever.
Right.
Honestly,
How
can no one pick up and run with this conversation starter?
Elon Musk fell in love with Grimes because she made an obscure joke 3 years prior to him wanting to make the joke on Twitter.
Wow.
Do we know the joke?
Yeah, it's nothing that makes sense to either of us, but okay. I'll try to find it if I can. Elon Musk joke.
Knowing his sense of
Grimes.
humor, it's not a very good one.
It's a super nerdy joke.
She had that Wario in court 3 years before he thought about it.
It's pretty much that. Okay, let's see. Musk wanted to combine the two. Oh, so Rococo, is the style of the French Baroque period. I only know Rococo because it's a song by
Beach
Arcade
Boys,
Fire.
right?
Also that too.
Down in
Oh, exactly. So, according to page 6, nerdy niche jokes are the reason the two are a couple. Apparently, Musk wanted to tweet a joke about AI, but Grimes had already made it. Rocco Basilisk is a thought experiment that questions the risk of AI, hypothesizing a reality where robot overlords take over and punish humans who didn't help bring it into existence. Rococo is a style from the end of the French Baroque period, characterized by ornate decorations, dense ornaments, and theatrical asymmetry. Musk wanted to combine the two into Rococo Basilisk, which pays 6 muses might be a play on how ridiculous and complex both concepts are. Okay. It's a joke about how 2 people in the entire world would probably get it. This is how they put it. So anyway, she made the joke. And hold on. Yeah, most people don't know this, but anyway, Grimes made the joke, and Elon Musk said, I want to make a joke about this. Someone said, oh, Grimes already did this 3 years ago. And then he basically slid into her DMs.
He was like, I've been waiting for this. This is my soulmate.
Right? God. Talk about a meet cute.
It's really,
Right?
It's so cute that it was fascinating for me to talk about it. Anyway, because we like them both
and
so
clearly
much.
it was meant to be.
I mean,
Yeah.
until it wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, I think you know that I've been trying to find the good in this movie.
Yeah.
Having finished The
that's our mission.
Desolation of Smaug now recently, I don't know that I can find much to redeem it. But that's not I'm jumping ahead.
As we're wont to do on this show.
Yes.
We love jumping ahead.
So for those of you that are watching along with us today, we are going to be talking from the beginning of Desolation of Smaug to when they enter Lake Town. So don't get ahead of us.
Yeah, just the first half of the film.
Alex said
but there's a lot to talk about here.
What's your So Ben, you said that this movie, the price of admission is worth it with Smaug.
Yes.
So we're not going to talk about him today, but I couldn't agree with you more.
Yes. Like, it is so good. And also the Ed Sheeran song slaps.
Oh yeah.
I actually somehow
we're getting
know
ahead.
that song.
It's next week, but man, like I will say, and I'll say it again, next week, that as much as I disagree with like how they handled the cliffhanger in this movie, where I think all of the Smaug stuff should have either ended in this movie or it just should have been 2 movies, and we should have gotten the Battle of the 5 Armies in this movie as well. That cliffhanger works. It works. Yeah. How they handle the 3rd movie does not work. But this cliffhanger, and it was so weird. I just saw a TikTok saying like, it must have been at an award show because like they were all like in the tuxes with the cummerbunds and bow ties and something. So it must, the Cumberbatches. And like Miles Teller said one of his favorite lines is from Whiplash was like, "Come play with us," and he responds with 4 words the NFL that will never say to you. Channing Tatum says from 21 Jump Street, F science, like, when after he does like the problem on the board. And Benedict Cumberbatch says one of my favorite lines was, "I am fire, I am death." And then, the "what have we done?" Boom. "Oh, Miss Behind." And it worked. Like I just got chills and watching that again. But yeah, focusing on part 1, the main thing that I thought about this movie is that we had, over the holiday, Lord of the Rings are Christmas movies for me. Every Christmas Eve, we'd go to a new movie, and for those 3 years, they were Lord of the Rings. And so I still try and watch them every Christmas, and if I can get my family to watch them, I will. And, they're always passed out at 9 o'clock, and I'll finish them on my own. But we watched all of them, and they're so good. They're so well made, and I only watch the extended editions, and they work so well. There's so much in the extended editions that I'm like, oh, I love this, but I'm a nerd, so I get why they cut it out. And then there's other things like Faramir's backstory, where I'm like, how do they cut this out? This is every single motivation from Denethor, Boromir, and Faramir in one scene. How do you cut this out? It works so well.
And we get to see Boromir again. Who
and Sean Bean is, oh God, Sean Bean is just a big warm hug.
I haven't watched. Oh, wow.
That's the thing is that there are like those scenes. I love them, but I know I'm like, oh, this wasn't in there. But other scenes, like I haven't watched the theatrical cut in so long that sometimes I'm just like, oh yeah, this isn't in there, is there?
Right.
But going back to these movies, these are the extended versions, and they feel like it. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about Mirkwood, and there's just so much that, like, it's just like, oh, we just filmed more, so let's put it in there. Like, oh, we did an extended edition for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, we should do one for this, when, like, it doesn't add anything to these movies. It doesn't give you more. It doesn't fill in any, like, you know, Saruman doesn't just disappear like he does in Lord of the Rings. Like, you get that finality in Return of the King.
Right.
Or it's just more of them wandering around the forest, and it doesn't add anything to the movies.
Right.
I think it is the difference between we are filming the books. We are filming everything that is there to the best of the medium allows itself to, right? Like, okay, it does make sense that these two battles are truncated, or like, you know, like we don't need to see two different times where the hobbits run off from the orcs. We just need to see it once or whatever. But with this, it's like really like stretching dough way too thin and dough that wasn't there. And I can understand. And this is the biggest note that we all three of us have. It should have just been two movies. And the reason why you can kind of get away with some of the things he added, besides the Tariel stuff, because that makes me want to like punch my brain. A lot of what Tolkien does in the chapters are, and you can imagine fun things happen, but we're not going to get into that right now. He like hop, skips, and jumps over a lot of things in the chapters too. So filling that stuff out, I don't have a problem with it. Alex and I just got to the part of Helm's Deep in the book, and I was like, why is this going so much quicker? Because they spend more time in the movie getting ready for the battle at Helm's Deep than the book gets ready for it. And I think that makes sense.
That is one of the things that I think Jackson does well in his adaptations in Lord of the Rings, and to a lesser degree, I think, in the Hobbit films, is really embellishing some of these action sequences, because that is where film, I think, has an advantage over books in some aspect. It's a visual medium inherently, so you want to see cool action stuff. Maybe there's an action scene we'll get to in this first half of the second movie that I don't think works, but we'll talk about that.
Give me the River Rapids ride. I want that ride at Lord of the Rings theme park, like how they have Grizzly River Rapids. Like, don't act like you wouldn't go down in it. Like, they put you in like a little barrel and spin you around and have like, animatronic orcs on the side shooting fake arrows at you. Give me that. I will wait in line for 2 hours for that any day of the week.
If Lord of the Rings world happens, sign me up. I will go on that ride.
Lord of the Rings world does need to happen. Isn't that like kind of what those people just bought this for? Like, they have rights to making a theme park?
I don't think it includes theme parks.
I think it does.
If the trend continues, we may get it within the next few decades. Who knows?
Listen, I'll be too old to ride roller coasters.
Do you think it'd be successful? Because I know that like everyone goes to New Zealand because I didn't realize that they destroyed Hobbiton after Lord of the Rings. Like, they got rid of it, but then they rebuilt it for this, and they're like, okay, we're gonna keep it for tourism. And
Is that what that was? I didn't realize.
they rebuilt it for these movies, and they're like, okay, we're keeping it as tourist destination. This is money, 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 which is very smart.
So smart.
And I want to go there. It's my number one destination. Do you think a Middle Earth theme park would be successful?
Jess and I just went to the Wizarding World recently, and I would say that Lord of the Rings is far more popular than Harry Potter.
I don't know.
I think it is. Maybe it's skewing more towards an older demo just because of the age of the series, but I think it's more universally
I don't
appealing.
know. I think that's hard to say.
I think you would have more older people who are into Lord of the Rings just because of the age of the Harry Potter franchise.
Older humans aren't the ones going to theme parks.
But they have kids and they have grandkids, and so that's a family thing. You get the whole family together, you go. I think it would be massively successful. One of the reasons that Tolkien's world is so engaging and interesting is because of how immersive the settings are and how great of a job he does at describing the settings. that's why the film, Peter Jackson's film versions of Lord of the Rings are so engaging, is because of they have New Zealand as their setting, and it's just so diverse, and you have all these amazing landscapes and stuff. So if you could capture some of those in a theme park, like, oh my God, I would go there in a second.
What studio owns Lord of the Rings, or what was it released under?
New Line Cinema, and then Warner Brothers. I think that's
I think Warner
Brothers
is the studio that owns it.
Got it.
Okay.
So it's not like so much cat going on. So it's not like Jurassic Park, where it's like, hey, we own, like, we have Steven Spielberg's head in a jar, so we can do whatever we want with it. Anyway, I think it could be successful. We can live in that world where it exists, but that's not. The river barrel ride aside, where does the movie open up, Alex?
We open up with a flashback, one of
no.
many in this movie. We have title, and then we get to open upon Bree, a familiar sight from the first movie, and we have a flashback with Thorin just chilling in the prancing pony.
Relaxing, all cool.
Yeah, well, and he's getting some heat. There's some salty characters looking at him because they're, we've established that there's this bounty on his head from the orcs. So, and Gandalf comes in to sort of save him. He sits down with Thorin, and then the guys kind of back off. And we get a flashback of the moment where he proposes the quest for Erebor to Thorin.
Sorry, my cat just stepped on my laptop and deleted all of my notes from this movie. So I am trying to Google how to undelete things, but all I know is I remember I did read my first line is that Gandalf is very rude to the waitress, and as a service industry worker, I don't like anybody just reaching out and being like, I'll have the same, as she's walking by helping other people. No. She'll come to the table, Gandalf, and you'll wait your turn. Okay? Don't do that. Don't do that. All right?
It is actually pretty rude. Is it because he's trying to normalize the situation because he's about to get killed? Like, he's like trying to bring someone. Is it like when someone's in danger, like a girl will turn to a friend and be like, "Oh my God, hi, how are you?" if they're being followed,
Right.
and they're like, "Oh my God, I know you so well," or like you're gonna go up to the door of the neighbor that you don't know. It's the professional Ben, where Natalie Portman walks by her dead baby brother's house.
Knocks on Leon's door.
That's what it is. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but.
And I will say that is within, I think, Gandalf's character to be kind of brusque and rude. At least book Gandalf. I think Gandalf in the movies is a little nicer, a little more kindly old grandpa than sort of curt and short. But I would imagine that Gandalf is a big tipper. So I think he made up for that.
No way.
Oh, yeah.
No, Gandalf doesn't have money.
Yeah, Gandalf seems like the guy that's like, oh, everything will just work out. Like,
yeah, 100%.
Goes around whimsy and it's like, Gandalf seems like the guy that's like, don't you know who I am? Like, I feel like he drops that line quite a bit.
Yeah, because he scares the crap out of Sam, by the way. Like, and everyone's like, okay, if I don't do this, he's going to turn me into a toad. Like, I think he gets by on social currency more than anything.
Right, and fear.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and the guy who owns the prancing pony is the one who, like, helped out Frodo, too, right? Or is
this would be his father.
Ah.
Because this is, 50, 60, 70, I don't know the exact number. I think it's like 70 years before the Lord of the Rings. So I think it's, Butterbur's dad. And we do get a shot of him because, again, we need as many connections to Lord of the Rings as possible.
Yeah. Even,
and there's a
like,
lot
that's
more.
the thing is that even in Fellowship, Peter Jackson's carrot-eating, burping cameo, like, you kind of blink and you miss it. It's raining outside. And this one, he just goes, like, looks right at the camera, goes, and like he's a pirate. And it's like, okay, Peter, like, you working very hard, but just again, I don't. Man.
Not the only obvious cameo in this movie as well, but we'll get to that next week.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. No one cares how well this movie did because it made almost $1 billion in the box office.
As I was looking up the synopsis, like, by the way, I recovered my notes.
I'm so glad because someone needs to have
Yeah.
We're 20 minutes into this podcast and I have no thread
We're just
going.
flying
right now.
blind.
Yeah,
But it made so much money.
so much money. You know, Peter Jackson's going to bed tonight, going, I did really well. This is a good
they
movie.
marketed it so well with they never showed Smaug in any of the marketing material. Everyone knew he was voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch, who had just what year did this movie come out?
10 years ago, right? Yeah.
14?
Release date
13?
is Los Angeles premiere is the 2nd of December 2013.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, so 2013. So this was when was Star Trek Into Darkness? Because it was this year as well, right? Yeah, 2013.
really?
So that was
Big year
the
for
summer of 2013.
Totally. The summer of Count Benedict, really.
Exactly. Like, I mean, say what you want about that movie. Everyone was at least like, oh, he's good. And he's got the voice. Like, that was the thing is that, like, yeah, people don't like Into Darkness that much. And I understand that. But it was the same. Like, I compare these movies very similarly where it's like, you have to wade through a little bit. But getting to Benedict is very much worth it when he finally shows up in both those movies where it's like, he's worth the ticket again in both of these movies. So I compare them a lot. So this was like, this year was kind of like his coming out year. You know, Sherlock was starting to finally get big over here.
God, that's so true.
So it was everything was starting to roll together. And I'm, right after this, like a few years later, he gets Doctor Strange, starts getting nominated for Academy Awards for The Imitation Game. So this is all when it starts.
He loses his virginity right after this movie comes out too.
Big day.
Good for him,
I know, really good for him. The only thing about Into Darkness, which I like all those, a lot of people had problems with them for different reasons, but it is a little problematic that character was whitewashed when it was a traditionally wonderful role played by Ricardo Montalban. Montalban. That was the unfortunate thing. Is like, hey, do we really need to keep on like mining the well of like things we've already seen, and B, this character should be a person of color? But we digress. So I'm just gonna say it now. Thorin, played by Richard Armitage, sucks. I hate this character. I hate how he plays it, and there's nothing redeeming about this character whatsoever.
It takes a while for him to get redeemed.
There's nothing to redeem. He's not even good acting.
I think he's great in terms of acting ability.
I will push back on that. You can not like a character, and I think that's what makes his performance good, is like, you wouldn't care about him if he was a bad actor. You would just be like, oh, this guy's an a-hole. Like,
that's fair.
But like, he's doing a good job, and that's what makes like you not like him.
He's doing the best job he can do. I don't like it at all. You know what it is? It feels like Anne Hathaway is playing the role. He's trying way too hard. And I like Anne Hathaway. I'm just gonna dig my hole over here, you guys. Let me just live in this
Thorin
hole.
dreamed a dream, okay?
I can't wait to see him crying with snot on his mouth. All right, so we see them. They set off the idea to like go back to the mountain, and then we're getting chased. Is that right?
Yes. And that's my next note, is that the Eagles didn't take them very far. Like, it seemed like they took them really far away, but then the orcs got stranded on the side of a mountain, like on a cliffside, but suddenly they are like hot on their tail again. Like,
so they don't get into this in the movie, but in the book and I think there's a reason.
Why wouldn't they get into it in the movie? Because the movie's extended.
We have nothing but time.
There's plenty of time, but they don't get into it, where the Eagles and the men of this land of like Carrick is kind of the area they're in. Like, they are not necessarily on the best of terms. And so the men they would be like shot at, essentially.
No, I know that. I know that much. Is that like anytime someone's like, well, why didn't the Eagles take the ring? They have reasons. Stop it. Don't be that guy. But just seemingly where it seemed like the Eagles at least took them like, I don't know, 20 miles away. Like, I'm in LA right now. The Eagles at least took them to Orange County, and the orcs are right on their tails again. And it was just like, wait, how did just physics wise, like, it's like they always say, oh, as the eagle flies, as the bird flies, as the Nazgul flies. Well, they're on wolves, so they should be farther behind.
If I was going to give the most benefit of the doubt to the movie, I would say that based on things we see later in the second half with Dol Guldur, the spirit of Sauron is growing in strength and they are close to his stronghold. So maybe there's some sort of energy that they've been given to push on through the night and ride harder and faster, but that's the most charitable explanation I can give. It does not make the most sense. Again, it's this need of these movies to make so many things like the most urgent thing ever. We saw this back in Rivendell in the first movie where they had to flee into Rivendell. We're seeing this now where they have to flee to where they're going, which we later find out they're going to Bjorn's.
Right. But it's so frantic.
Yeah, we see it at the very end with the whole Smaug sequence. So there's so many things that there's just this invented urgency that Peter Jackson injects, which I don't know if it necessarily works right here. I think they could have just started this movie with, all right, where are we going to go next? We need to seek shelter. Like, we don't need to start right away with, all right, and there's another chase. Like, we just ended the last movie with this big, chase sequence. So
I think that's a really great point, because if it's not following, like, it's feeling like we're dropped into the middle of a movie, not into the beginning of a second movie, and letting, like, some things build. Just that prologue and the flashback of being at the prancing pony isn't, like, enough of a calm moment enough. Like, give us another opportunity to, like, remember who the characters are, remember who we're dealing with, and what the situation is. What better way to reintroduce us to act like these characters we haven't seen in a year, if you're watching it sequentially from it being released in theaters, than 2 by 2 meeting Bjorn.
Yeah, as opposed to being introduced to this movie with a flashback with a piece of information that will only become relevant over halfway through the movie, and it's just a little reminder for one moment. Like, that's the only reason we really have that flashback with Thorin, is to remember, oh yeah, Gandalf gave him these things and he got them from somewhere, and that it's just so irrelevant to the rest of the movie. Like, why did we start with that?
Yeah, it's honestly, if you would have skipped that and gone straight into the chase, that would have been better. In the same way that Two Towers starts with Gandalf free diving onto a Balrog, and you're like, oh my God, what it like? Because you kind of think when you're watching that and you hear like the noise is like, oh, are they giving us like a recap? And then you realize, especially just the camera angle, fly you fools, and then it just like the camera just face dives off the bridge and just starts following, and you're like, what is going on? Like, this is the most intense thing ever. And so if they would have just done that, where you start with the chase and you're like, oh yeah, this is where we are. Okay, got it. But yeah, it just seems like, I don't get the prologue of this movie at all. Like, it didn't do anything. Like, I'm okay with why they want to take back the mountain and why they have to do it now. I don't need a reason for Gandalf meeting him at the prancing pony. Like, I don't need the prancing. Like, that's the least callbacky thing that I need. Is I love the prancing pony. I want to go get a beer there, but I don't need it in another movie.
Yeah, because in Two Towers, that's a flashback that's super relevant for when Gandalf comes back.
Yes.
It's like a huge moment in that movie. And I'm sorry to say, Thrain revealed to be at Dol Guldur, not a huge moment.
No.
In my opinion, it doesn't really matter.
Not really.
The Wilhelm scream that they give him, though, is amazing.
Oh, we'll get
Talk
there.
about it.
One of many in this movie. Or
Yes.
I think there's 2 or 3.
There's only 2. Well, that's just it. Is like, as a joke, he's done it in every single movie. So, but that's just what it is. So we go to Bjorn. They totally, again, in a movie that has nothing but time, they totally rush the 2x2 and just throw all the 6 dwarves that don't matter out at the same time.
Mhm.
But I will say, at first I was like, I don't know that I really like this interpretation of Bjorn, but I actually think he's really great. This actor's really wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I like him quite a bit. And that is the one thing. We'll get to Battle of the Five Armies where there's just like a lot of extended violence in that movie. That's all the extended version is for Battle of the Five Armies, just extended violence. And you get some extended Beorn scenes and they rule. They freaking rule. Because in the books, like Thorin doesn't kill Azog or Bolg, it's Beorn. Thorin, I'm pretty sure, dies by like his honor guard, and then Beorn comes in, breaks him in half, and like carries Thorin's body out, like to be properly buried. Like I think that's what happens in the books. I haven't read The Hobbit in a minute.
Well, Thorin dies on his deathbed forgiving Bilbo. So so like he might have carried him after being wounded. Is that yeah, that sounds right.
But yeah,
that sounds gross.
Also, I have the note that all the dwarves are idiots and don't know how locks work because like they're all like banging on the door to get in, and then finally like Thorn runs up and like hits the latch up, and it's like, really, guys, come on.
Look, it was such an urgent chase, they just couldn't think.
No, because they're used to doors that have magical keys and are hidden. They don't know how to open actual doors. That's why there had to be a marking on Bilbo's door to say, this is the burglar. You guys, I'm stretching this. Help me, please.
Yeah. Look, if it was a door made of stone, they would have got it in 2 seconds. They would have totally
got it.
Yeah, but it was wood, so...
Well, and Alex said something while we were watching this, too, that he's just disappointed that we didn't get the dogs walking on hind legs serving everybody.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
There were so many...
ridiculous.
There were so many fantastical things they could have done with Bjorn, that with all the animals and stuff, that it was a little disappointing not to see that. But I understand tonally they want to make it fit with Lord of the Rings, and... So, Tolkien did that as well. Like, there were so many things he didn't bring into Lord of the Rings, including giants, and, so many, dogs walking on their hind legs. So, and talking birds, it makes sense. But a little disappointed. It would have been great to see CGI dogs on screen.
And when did we...
no, we would have gotten real dogs. That would have been practical.
Practical, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably right. There's some CGI moments in this, too, that are just painful, but I don't know if we'll get to it in this part. So they go to Beorn. What he actually, like, is genuinely interested in what they did. Like, kind of, like, hates dwarves but hates orcs more. And then what's going on?
This is another weird moment where... Like, Bolg rides up and says, you have to go back to Dol Guldur, to Azog. And then we get a weird, like, Benedict Cumberbatch with, like, the shadow moving around. And that's how, like, that's what the necromancer is. Because they're like, oh, again, I compare this a lot to Star Trek Into Darkness, where, like, we know the necromancer is Sauron. We know that.
Right.
Everybody knows that. Everybody knew that Benedict Cumberbatch was Khan, and they're like, no, he's John Harrison. No one, J.J. Abrams, it's okay. It's okay. And so they play it off as this mystery, and then he's like, okay, you need to go raise our armies and like lead our armies, so you can't, hunt Thorin. You can't go on this, this personal quest. And he goes, Bolg, and like Bolg walks in. He's like, this isn't an introduction. We just saw him. Like,
right. He was in the last movie.
Like, in the same way that Azog gets introduced in the first movie, and then like when he gets revealed to Thorin, it's like supposed to be some big reveal. Yeah. It's like, we just saw him literally 5 minutes ago ride up on a wolf and be like, hey, come on back to the base. Like,
I'm Azog.
I think it's because these characters are just so... But besides, I think Azog is a little bit more because he's got the cool arm. They're just so not memorable. So I feel like they were like, so many people are not going to remember who this son of Azog Bolg is. So we got to like give a moment to be like, oh yeah, that guy. And that just speaks to why is this character here?
Like, I just don't get why these aren't actors. Like why they're CGI, because rewatching, Fellowship in 10 minutes, and I'm being very generous with 10 minutes of screen time, Lurtz, the leader of the Uruk-hai, is so memorable. Right. When he gets stabbed in the leg and licks the knife and throws it at Aragorn, and Vigo really blocked that knife. I know everybody knows that fact, but he really blocked that knife throw, which is insane. Vigo's a crazy person.
Yeah.
I don't actually know that.
Oh yeah, that was not supposed to happen. He was supposed to like throw it off screen. It was supposed to CGI, and he accidentally threw it at Vigo, and he really blocked it with that sword. That's a real knife throw blocked by Viggo Mortensen.
Are you kidding me?
True story. It's insane that like nothing that bad happened on the set because like they were really up in those mountains. Sean Bean hates helicopters, so he climbed Caradras every day. Instead of taking the helicopter, he'd be like, yeah, I'll just get up at 6 a.m. and I'll climb the mountain myself and I'll meet you guys up there. So he's climbing as Boromir in full costume up there.
Point of order, it is Caradhras because the DH is a TH sound, but it's okay.
I will come through this StreamYard screen. But yeah, it's insane that but just those moments. And then Gothmog in the third one with all his like deformed face, like you remember you might not know their names and that's totally okay, but you remember these orcs because the makeup and their mannerisms and like somewhat like, no, what about a mouthful when, they're trying to eat Merry and Pippin? Like looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. Like you remember these moments. Put these guys in makeup. I want it like the guy who plays the Mountain in Game of Thrones. Put him in some white, pale, scarred up makeup with a hook hand. He's terrifying. He's absolutely terrifying. Like that would be crazy.
It was really nice in the second back half of this to actually see practical orcs again because we do get that in some of the fight sequences later in this movie, and it was just enough of a tease because they're not like characters really. There's just in the house that we get a couple, and it was like, oh, we could have had that for like the whole thing.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Like the orc there interrogating, like that Legolas and Thranduil are interrogating, and that guy is like, this is my 15 minutes of fame. He's like, you sawed him with a Morgul shaft. And he's like quivering and like slobbering. Like this guy is going for it. He's the one guy in orc makeup, and he is going to give all the performance right now. And I fully respect him for it. So yeah. Another frustrating thing is that like stop CGIing these orcs. You have, and I know it's probably for time and student interference where they just have to crank these movies out, but I'd kill for a practical Azog and Bolg because I think they'd be like, because like again, Azog's got his hook just drilled into his arm, and Bolg's got like his armor like cut into him. Like these aren't like armor plates; they're like cut into his skin.
It's so, like his skin is layered onto it. Like it's almost like that was his suture, or like they replaced pieces of his skin with the armor. It's sick looking.
Yeah.
So you said the Morgul blade. What was that? The
Morgul. He shot him with a Morgul shaft.
So that's what I was saying, Alex. That 100% Keeley was going to die.
Yeah. So we were arguing.
Alex didn't remember.
Yeah, we were arguing about whether the poison or the arrow was the same kind of thing that Frodo got stabbed with, and I disagree.
I don't think it is. I think it's just a poison arrow. Yeah. It's not like turning him into a...
But it's a Morgul thing. Isn't it a Morgul blade? And it's a Morgul shaft. So
I'm so glad I got everyone saying shaft on here.
Shaft.
You really got me messed up over here. So I'm saying like that's why they need that king's thing, the weed.
The king's foil later. Yeah. I hope that's not it.
It is that. They wouldn't have said
But
Morgul.
The difference is that I don't know, because Arwen even says he's beyond my skill. Like the King's Foil will help slow the poison in Fellowship, but it won't heal him. In this, and we're going to talk, well, there's so much we need to talk about next week. I always love, and rewatching the extended version where like, because Aragorn's very known for his healing abilities as a ranger, and like in the extended Return of the King, he heals Eowyn's arm because she got hit with the mace, the Morning Star from the Witch King. And in the movie, he like takes like a wet rag and like squeezes it out and like rubs it on her forehead, and that's it. And I'm just like, I guess that worked. Okay. And then in this,
the touch of a lever.
And then what's her name? Tariel? Like crushes up the King's Foil and then just like presses. I'm like, man, like, this is great. Can we put these in hospitals? But yeah,
and then like the dwarf is like, we got to see this. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, I don't think that they're the same. I think it's like to a lesser extent than maybe it's just an actual Nazgul wielding these blades. It's like a different thing than just an orc. But I could be wrong. But that's how I do it. It's that like the King's Foil healed Keely, and that it just like slowed the poison for Frodo.
That sounds about right. I think that they were trying to create the same sense of urgency.
Yes,
though.
absolutely.
But yeah, Alex was just like, it's just poison. No, they legit said Morgul. It's fine.
I don't want to get too much into it. The problem I had with it was the moment when he sees Toriel like all bright, like Frodo sees Arwen in the movie, and it's like that wouldn't have happened. Because the reason that was happening because he was partly in the Wraith world.
Yes.
So anyway.
But maybe he was. Anyway, so they take off. They leave Beorn after taking his ponies. And then did Radagast happen upon them again? And that's why he went? Yeah, they found Radagast again, right?
No, right before they enter Mirkwood, Beorn tells Gandalf, like, hey, the storm is coming from the old fortress Dol Guldur, and so that's why Gandalf's like, okay, I need to go handle this. There's more pressing matters, so he leaves. Which is like what Alex said last time, is like they give Gandalf a reason to leave rather than just being like this absent-minded professor that's just like, oh, whimsy, I'm gonna go now. And it's like, okay, like I do like the pressing issue of that, of like giving him reason to leave, and that's when Radagast jump scares us at the old at the prison.
That's
right?
what it was.
Yeah, at Rudar, at the High Fells of Rudar, which is like okay, like again, this is just too much. It's
like
it's
they're
just
trying
too much in
to
this
see
movie.
if the king actually escaped his tomb or whatever.
So this whole invention, I don't. It just contradicts too much the established lore for me. So like with this whole like side plot line of Gandalf and the White Council with Dol Guldur, they're doing a similar thing that like Rings of Power did, where they're compressing a lot of events together in the timeline. Because in the actual timeline, Gandalf did leave to go deal with the Necromancer / Sauron. They already knew he was Sauron before this. And this was all part of his plan, but he just went with, the White Council. And so this whole like doing the reconnaissance and going there and checking it out, that all happened like hundreds of years. I'm fine with that. But this extra piece of evidence to tie in the Nazgul, I don't understand, because number one, they're making it so that the Nazgul were defeated and imprisoned, which makes no sense because they don't have like physical form, they're spirits. They're like in the spirit world.
I thought it was just. Their physical bodies never died.
They faded. What happened is they were given the Rings of Power, and then eventually they completely faded into the Wraith world.
Got it.
And so that's why they wear the black cloaks, is because they have no bodies to inhabit.
Got it.
So this idea of them like defeating the Nazgul and the Witch King, and then taking the Witch King imprisoned and chaining him up in a tomb. It's like, no, he could have just like, for example, when the Nazgul were defeated at the Fords of Bruinen, they just flew back to Mordor in spirit form to regain their strength. So it just makes no sense. It just makes zero sense. And what's the point of this scene other than, oh, it's a Morgul? Just have him go to Dol Guldur. We don't need this extra step.
I literally have wrote it hat on hat on hats on hats. Like it's just
totally.
just go. It's like I'm along for this like Sauron prequel right now. Just go, and it's just I don't know.
That's such a good point. Like,
and I think that's where like the extended versions are just like they add a lot of stuff in here too, and I can't remember what scenes they are, but it's just like it's just stuff that they filmed, and they're like, okay, put it in there, even though like there's scenes that literally clash with each other in these extended versions that just like, why just don't do this.
And like a good director or a good writer, the things that you say is like, kill your babies. Sometimes you're gonna have to be like, God, I really love how this scene turned out, but it is not right. We don't need that. And like to that example, your earlier point, like Sauron is gone. No one cared when you watched it in the theater. Like, yeah, it makes sense. Like when you're watching it with a little bit renewed information, you're like, oh, it is weird that Sauron is just gone and not in the third movie. But it actually didn't really matter because that really wasn't what the whole movie was about. Yeah. So knowing where to cut is important.
And I will say Christopher Lee cared very much when he
know Christopher Lee
cared.
We know that he cared.
But I will say that I saw, once you speak something out loud, all of your For You pages are listening, all your devices are listening, so things will cater to you, is that they were so rushed that they were writing scenes. Maybe it was just for Battle of the Five Armies, but they were writing scenes on the day of. They were filming stuff like basically with almost out scripts in this thing. Wow. So that's when I say like there's a lot of studio interference and stuff like that, where it's just like they were. I don't want to relieve them of all their guilt of this or like responsibility of these being a little bit of a mess, but they were very highly pressured by the studio to get this trilogy out ASAP.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense, but also is crazy to do something on this scale and just like fly by the seat of your pants.
Especially when like, and that's where you just see like studios just don't understand, like executives, like there's 3 years of pre-production of Lord of the Rings before they shot a single scene. Yeah. 3 years of pre-production, building sets, storyboarding, building every piece of armor for every, soldier on the battlefield. And then they're just like, oh yeah, we can just throw together like another massive trilogy epic, we can just throw it together. It's like, no,
this is what the executives do understand this, because even though they didn't spend that amount of time, it still made $1 billion.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter because the bottom line they still made the money back.
They're just banking on the quality of the previous installment
and
the goodwill that they've generated.
And it worked. So I guess that's just it. It's like, well, why put in the extra effort if you've already done that legwork? And this is not me advocating for that. I'm just saying I could see why.
But imagine them putting in the same, maybe not 3 years of pre-production, but a year of pre-production. Like just something where you're giving Peter Jackson like, hey, we lost Guillermo del Toro. All right, let's start from square one again, take a breath, and we'll do this right. And we'll make 2 movies. Imagine making 2 classic movies that people are still buying dwarf figurines, people are still buying Azog figurines, people are watching these every Christmas just like they were Lord of the Rings. It's another trilogy, 2 movies that are instant classics that everybody loves, and that, like, because the money's still coming in from Lord of the Rings. Money is still being printed from that movie.
When they can release an anniversary edition every, how many years.
No one, and you're talking to me, I could have sworn I owned the extended editions on Blu-ray, but I can't find them anywhere, so maybe I don't. And that says a lot when this guy, Middle-earth Nerd, I'm wearing a Toss Me dwarf sweatshirt right now.
Is that what that is?
Amazing.
It says Toss Me in dwarvish. When I don't own that. And so just that thing, just Blu-ray sales, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I promise you they're a lot lower than just the extended version sales of Lord of the Rings, when everyone's like, oh my God, I need to see more of this world. I want to see every deleted scene. What happened to Saruman? I can't believe that. Oh, you get to see more of Boromir. I want to see that. Oh, elves walking by in the forest, and Sam says, ooh, look at the elves. I want to see that.
You do.
And it's great. Everything works, but there's none of that love and care in these movies. And especially when you literally emotionally break one of our best working directors to where he's only making documentaries now. Yeah. It's really sad. And I wish we had those love and care. And yes, this movie made $960 million. Awesome. It would have made.
It's being shown on HBO right now ad nauseum. So it's not being out. It's not out there, to be fair.
It's out there, but how many people are watching it? That's the thing.
Right. I mean, I think there's people that aren't as discerning as us. You just have like, there has to be some people that are like, I like this. There has to be.
There are fans, but I
Yeah,
don't
there
think
are.
it's as many as the Jackson original trilogy.
Yeah. Consider like it's lauded as like the best
100%.
trilogy of all time.
Oh yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
being a devil's advocate here. Like, I'm sure there's people that like it,
Stop
and I could
advocating for the devil, Jessica.
I know, but someone's
talked
gotta,
about this.
Someone's got to see if you guys are right with God or not. I was talking total segue or total tangent, but my mom was talking about Alex, and she's like, "I love that he knows so much about the devil." No, I said,
Whoa.
I love that he knows so much about the Bible, and I said, "Oh yeah, you do." He's like, but she said, "You know who else knows a lot about the Bible? The devil." I was like, "All right, Mom, I know."
So your mom thinks I am the devil. Great.
Which is awesome. Probably better because that you have nowhere to go up but up from that
100%.
perspective. All right, so
Mirkwood, right?
No, technically, are we in Dol Guldur still?
No, we're back to Mirkwood. We're back to
Okay,
The
'cause
journey through Mirkwood. Bjorn
now
had
it's time for Mirkwood, where I think not without even touching the water, Bomber falls asleep.
Well, no. So yeah, Bjorn had told them, like, or Gandalf
Stay on
had
the
told
path.
them, yeah, stay on the path. There's the last thing he says to them.
Right.
Don't, and also, yeah, warn them about touching the water.
Mm-hmm.
So they have that whole sequence where they're crossing, and Bilbo's like, whoa, he looks in. Bomber falls asleep. And it's interesting what they end up doing here, because in the book, they have this whole Mirkwood sequence is basically they're just starving, right? They've run out of provisions. They're lost. It's dark.
They're high.
Not in the book. In the book, they don't have that whole aspect, and it's the impetus is to get food and find food and survive as they find their way through, and that's why you then have the encounters with the elves, which don't exist here. So it's a really interesting act, and I think the reason that they chose to change it is because of the whole Dol Guldur influence being so prominently featured in this story, where now there's this dark power aspect that is more present in Mirkwood that's confusing them and making them kind of drunk and forgetful, and that's why they're lost, and that's why they're sort of in peril, which I think is an interesting change to make.
I think I think the theatrical version of this scene works really well, where like the stuffiness and like just the claustrophobia of the forest, like it's filmed really well. But again, I go back to the extended version where it's just like 10 minutes of like leering close-ups and like slowly. It's like, okay, I get it. I just like, this is where the theatrical cut is better, where it's like you get the point they're trying to make. And I like the build up to the spiders. I think the spiders look really good. I think they're like gross and disgusting. And like, I like the fact that when Bilbo puts the ring on, like he can understand their dark speech. And I love that.
It's kinda cool.
It is cool. And like, this is where in the book, he wears the ring like a lot more. Like when we get to the Elvish kingdom, I think he wears it for like weeks trying to figure out,
time.
Yeah, the whole time he's got it on, like trying to figure out like the delivery method and the wine barrels and stuff like that.
That is one of the things that I really don't like about this adaptation.
Why?
Is the ring.
Oh.
Because of these ties to Lord of the Rings. Like we see this later in the second half we'll get to. But in this Mirkwood sequence when they're fighting when he's fighting the spiders and he like drops the ring, and then you have the baby spider, and he's like, I have to defend the ring, and he like kills in anger, in defense of the ring, this baby spider, and then like breaks down. He's like, what did I do? And then grabs the ring and goes. It completely goes against one of the things that is set up in Lord of the Rings for why Bilbo was able to resist the effects of the ring much more than anyone else, is because he claimed the ring and in it had a moment of pity for Gollum and did not kill him. And so to then introduce an aspect where Bilbo kills over ownership of the ring is completely against his character, and it completely contradicts that aspect of the story, which I think is central in the resilience of Bilbo to the ring, the resilience of the hobbits. And it's just another needless, like, we get it. It's the One Ring. Like, we don't need that scene. I don't know if that's an extended scene or not, but It completely did not need to be in there. They have another moment where it's like the power of the ring affecting Bilbo already in the Smaug sequence. Like, I just feel like there's too much emphasis on Sauron's connection to the ring in this story, which is not important to this story. Like, the Dol Guldur stuff is enough. We don't need to see like already the ring affecting Bilbo. It makes no sense. So
yeah, it's literally been a day and he's murdering things over it. Like, he'd never last 60 years. Like, he wouldn't. It just wouldn't. Like, that's literally Gollum's tale. Within 5 minutes, Smeagol kills Deagle for the ring, and then that it corrupts him, like it like just envelops him in that moment because that was his choice. And that's not Bilbo. Like, that's the whole point of the hobbits, is that they can resist the ring because of like the goodness of them. And so and then especially just like before you stab a giant spider, Bilbo's got a lot of nerve to take off the ring and be like, I'm here. I'm sorry. That's still a 20-foot huge spider. Like, he probably should have died right there. Like, I don't know.
We see a much cockier Bilbo earlier on in this version than was in the books. Just keep that ring on, dude. Like, come on.
It is Martin Freeman, and I think that's a big element as to why. And part of me was going, well, okay, but from a story perspective, would we understand that it's going to take 60 years for this effect to take hold of Bilbo? But will we understand that? Is that why they're speeding it up? But it took a long time for it to affect Frodo. So it's not like, you know what I mean?
It didn't, the whole point is that it didn't really affect Bilbo much at all. Like, we see it towards the end when he's, basically choosing to give up the ring to Frodo, and he is resistant to it and gets snippy with Gandalf.
Right.
But that's after, decades and decades. So like, it never affected him like that, because
it's also because
moment
the ring
he claims the ring, he chooses not to kill Gollum.
And it's because the ring doesn't want to go to Gandalf and doesn't want to be destroyed. Like, that's why it's like, it's resisting that. Like, it's like a year that Frodo had, like, it's in the book, it's like, 20 something years, but he doesn't touch it, so it doesn't affect him. But then once they start their journey to Mordor, it's like, oh, I know what's going on. I don't want to be destroyed, so I'm going to start working overtime on this guy. And so by the end, like, that's why it works so well with just like the simple heartbeat sound when Frodo's hanging it over Mount Doom. It's like, nope, nope, nope. And it's just like that one last straw that breaks in Frodo. So even the most uncorruptible person gets corrupted. But I like this scene, and then I know I'm in the minority, but Legolas can do no wrong for me, and everything he does is really cool in my book, even when it's ridiculous. And I mean, I'm sorry, if I was Orlando Bloom and Peter Jackson was like, hey, do you want to come back and be a badass again for 2 movies? I'd be like, yeah, let me do all the badass stuff. And yeah, I love it.
So this is when the elves, Toriel and Legolas, come in to save
the dwarves,
save Thorin and company from the spiders. Yeah, and this is our first time seeing Legolas, and it won't be our last.
It will not be. I'm just gonna say it now, and this is going to color my entire feeling about Legolas in this. Orlando Bloom did not age gracefully. He's way rough looking, and he's like, you believe that is 10 years in the future, not in the past. It's upsetting. He's like gruff. It's very weird.
He's not in I don't think it's a bad way, but like, he looks stockier. Like, his face is more full. Like, he looks more like, this feels like it would be after Lord of the Rings, where it's like, dude, I've seen the War of the Ring. This is post War of the Ring Legolas. And not in a bad way, just like, I've seen some things. I've taken down an Oliphant single-handedly, and I'm, now, 1,500 years old. Like,
100%.
We also, it won't be our last time talking about Toriel, but we have the new character of Toriel.
I love her. I don't love what they do with her. I don't love the love story, but I think she does a great job. I like the character of Toriel. I think she's a cool character. I think, God, I used to know all these actors' names. I can't think of it now. Kate
Evangeline
Evangeline
yeah.
Lilly. I think that's a good performance.
Yes.
I think it's a good
she
performance.
Does,
I think
does
she looks
the best
great as
with
an
what
elf.
was given.
Yes, she does. She is not working with much, but she does what she is asked. And when she showed up, I was like, I'm about Toriel. She's cool.
She's hot too.
She's. Thank you. I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to.
It's okay. We can objectify. That was the whole point.
She's so hot.
And Keeley doesn't like her because she's wonderful and like nice. He likes her because she's a hot elf. That's it. So that's the only reason.
And he's lonely in that cellar.
Yeah, prejudice doesn't last when you find the hottie elf. He's like, oh, I hate elves. Oh, maybe I don't hate elves as much as I thought. What's up, girl?
Yeah. Oh,
you can change me.
Exactly.
She's like, oh, I'll get down with this dwarf.
But yeah, like when they lock them up, it's like I could have anything down my trousers. Like those, like in the same from the first movie, like it's a great sport if you got the balls for it. Those modern anachronisms, just they fall so flat in these movies, and I don't know how they snuck in there. If just like by necessity, like yeah, we'll film it, whatever. It's so bad. Like watching Lord of the Rings when everyone speaks so poetically and like this old English, and then in this it's just like what, it stands out so much.
I agree with you, and I don't know why. Like I think it's just the amount of them and the way they're presented and delivered, because one of the most iconic lines that I think most I mean, you can Tolkien purists maybe disagree, but the meat's back on the menu boys line, I think most people enjoy that from the original trilogy, but that's a total anachronism. But it just works. Like in that moment, it works because the delivery. But
when have you seen a menu?
Exactly.
Come on.
Exactly. Yeah, orcs don't have menus.
When have you seen a menu?
But it just works for whatever reason. For whatever reason.
Yeah, I think it was so funny you bring that because I just saw a TikTok of like, what's a corny line? And someone used that. I was like, that's a good point. You're still wrong, but that's a good point because that line rules. Because he just chops someone's head off. It lands on Merry and Pippin, and then just like, looks like meat's back on the menu, boys. And then they just tear this guy apart. Freaking awesome moment. Don't care if it makes sense whatsoever. Yeah. But yeah. Like, I would be okay with this love story of Toriel and Killy if that's not how it started. Like, that's not how you start a love story. Is like, oh, I could have anything down my trousers. And then she's like, well, and this is, you know what, short kings out there, when she says he's quite tall for a dwarf, that's wrong. That's
wrong.
You know what?
That's
wrong. Not cool, Toriel. Like, short kings matter too, okay?
Well, and she only is trying to get Legolas's goat. That's why she's saying it. Like, because I don't think ultimately that matters to her, but she is just saying it to get at Legolas, who also now is just a total F-boy. Like, he like totally sucks. Like, he's like, oh, you don't like me? Okay. Like, I don't know. But also, we haven't seen him fall in love with a dwarf yet either. So, it's all bad. It's all bad. He's basically is sexually aggressing her.
He's
like, hey, do you know who my dad is?
But I will say that in the same breath, the Lee Pace, Thranduil, and Thorin scene is awesome. Like we said it last week, how striking Lee Pace is, and this is where we really get him in this full tilt, and he is so good. Like, there's just, like we said last week, just these actors that aren't given too much, and they just go full bore with it. This is Lee Pace. Like, oh, I get to be an elvish king. I'm going to be the most elvish king you've ever seen. Like, you think Elrond is somebody? Watch. This is how you elf, baby. And that's what he does. Like, especially... And out of nowhere, you don't know what this means when he like leans in. He's like, "Don't think you're the only one to experience dragon fire," and like his face starts dissolving. They
wild.
Never explain it, and it doesn't matter. It's cool. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with things just being cool and mysterious. That's one of those moments.
And that's what I like. I love that moment, even though like it is a little over the top, but I think it's great because it is the kind of magic that just makes sense in Tolkien's world, where it doesn't need to be explained. It's just like, yep, he can just like, I guess that's what his face actually looks like, maybe, but he can hide it, as opposed to some of the magic like from Gandalf we'll see later on, where it's like magic force field, like that cheesy, kind of thing. So that this is a good application of the kind of Tolkienian soft magic. And it works perfectly in that scene because it's so menacing, it's so scary. You see why Thranduil has this kind of rage, and you get where he's coming from with his kind of isolationism and stuff. And I think that's what makes the character so great, is even if you disagree with him, you get where he's coming from, you get why he is the way he is. So yeah, and Lee Pace just kills it.
It is interesting because you can go one of two ways, and if you go like full bore, and if you like really push your acting to the wall, it can be a little too cheesy. And his ending line is like, 100 years is a blink of the eye. It's actually super cheesy and really made me cringe, but it's also super memorable too.
It works, man. Like
work.
he just works, where like he is like, is one of my favorite podcasts, Blank Check. He's like, he is swimming in the river of ham, but you are loving it. In the same way, and we talked about Avatar last time. In the same way, Stephen Lang is just in it. Welcome to Pandora. It will chew you up and spit you out. That is the same level where like, and it's like this great sweeping shot. 100 years is but a blink of an eye to an elf.
Yeah.
Lock you away and see if that loosens your tongue. It's so cheesy. It shouldn't work,
so
but
cheesy.
It does. He nails it so hard.
And you compare that to look, I love Hugo Weaving as an actor, and I think his performance as Elrond is good in the Jackson trilogy. It's not the Elrond that I kind of know from the books, but it's a good performance. But in this Hobbit trilogy, he is not even dipping his toe in the river of ham. He's just like kind of playing it. He just showed up to work that day and was like, oh, okay, whatever. And so the stark contrast, as you said, between Elrond and Thranduil is it's night and day. And so it was good to see an elf that, we get that level from.
Yeah, this
it's
feels...
the first time we've really seen it. I guess maybe Galadriel, Cate Blanchett is not in the trilogy, I think, hamming it up, but she's definitely committing. So other than that, I mean, it's the first time we've really seen that in these film adaptations.
Because like Galadriel's like this angelic goddess who is like all knowing and like, very like forgiving and welcoming of everybody, no prejudice of anything. And like, so this is like the first time we've seen like a mean elf. Like Elrond's very nice, Arwen's very nice, Legolas is very nice. And so this is like the first time we've seen he's a cruel elf. And so like we're like, oh, okay, this is different. And then he just like totally dives into it. And it's great.
And we do need to see him be that, because we don't need to see him be that, but these elves are uncharacteristically ruthless, and to the point where in the book, and it's to the point where it's hard for me to imagine Legolas coming from this group, because he's so regal and he's so stately and nice, but they're insane. Like they get drunk, they're passing out, they're bacchanalia. So it does really work, and it sells it better than
they're
the
like
Rankin
doomsday
Bass.
preppers.
Oh, snap.
They are like, they're just chilling in the forest, like they're not trying to bother with anything with the outside world. And I do like, it's such a cruel line where like when Bilbo's sneaking around and he's like, why don't you come out of the shadows? And you think it's talking to him, but he's talking to Toriel. And he's like, oh, Legolas said you fought well today, and like he's very taken with you. And he's like, don't worry, I know you'd never let him fall in love with a lowly Sylvan elf. He's like, you're right, I wouldn't. And it's like,
it's gross.
We just met Toriel, and we already like such a good way to get you on her side and get you off of Thranduil's side. Just that simple conversation, just that one line. And it reminded me of like, because people compare Doctor Strange to Tony Stark a lot, but like Tony Stark has always been like, oh, like I'm quippy, but I'm fun. Like I'm like the life of the party. And I remember when like after he gets injured, Rachel McAdams, who I'm just so in love with. I'll always love Rachel McAdams forever. And she's
Get
like,
in
Steven, you have a
line.
lot to live for. And he's like, oh, what, you? And I remember hearing the entire theater like gasp. And this is like
Yeah.
at a Marvel movie, you know?
Yeah.
No, like I'm a big Marvel fan. You don't go there for like a relationship dialogue. You go for the big action scenes, but like everyone gasping at like, oh, ow, that stung. And that's how this line felt. It's like, you're right. I wouldn't let my son marry a lowly sylvan elf. It's like, oh, cool. Jeez.
Yeah,
And-
it's
and
awful. It's awful.
I enjoy that from the lore perspective, and I think that's a good way to tie in the, as opposed to the heavy-handed ways that they do in this trilogy sometimes, of like the fact that, yeah, it is a completely different like class of elves because Thranduil comes from the Quenya elves as opposed to the Sylvan elves, so it's completely different, and that's like Legolas is descended from him, so he's like a Quenya elf, and so we get, and that's the same thing in Lothlorien where Galadriel and Celeborn are like ruling over these Sylvan elves, which is they're totally different, not totally, but pretty different.
Well, and that is interesting. Like, it could have just as simply been, okay, well, Sylvan elves be ruling over Sylvan elves, but they made it, you know, he made it complicated, which is interesting. So it has all these weird hierarchies. You're totally right, Ben, that you can't not like Toriel. It's just what they do with her. It's just the storytelling that really makes it really rough. And then the other thing that's difficult is that Evangeline becomes an anti-vaxxer, and that's okay. But, like, we're just
Different story
for another day.
She's supposed to be an amazing healer. What are you talking about, Evangeline?
She's like, oh well, you don't need any Kingsfoil. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Kingsfoil's big pharma. Don't listen to them.
Yeah, no, you're good. So then, within a blink of an eye, Bilbo gets them into barrels. And out of there.
That's the thing, is that you have nothing but time here, and you don't show Bilbo doing any kind of Ocean's 11 recon, figuring out the barrels and stuff like that. Like, there's nothing, and you don't even show the elves getting drunk. Like,
well, Ben, they needed to save all that screen time for the amazing action sequence coming up.
Hey, I'm not mad at the action sequence coming up, baby. Don't you get my man Bomber gets his moment in the sun, okay?
Yes, he does.
But just something simple of like him seeing. I watched this a few weeks ago when we were supposed to originally record. So like, and maybe this has already like slipped my mind, but like I don't remember him like scouting the wine room or like figuring out the pulley system. Maybe it's supposed to be a surprise of like trust me or something like that. But it's like, just give me one or two scenes. It doesn't have to be this like crazy reconnaissance full story arc, but like just a few of like, oh, that's how that works. Okay. Oh, the guards. There's a party tonight. The guards are getting drunk. Okay, now is our time to strike.
They do. I think the way that they do that is they don't show us Bilbo learning that stuff, but there is like the scene. I think it's with the Thranduil Toriel conversation where he talks about the party. And so we see that through the Elvish perspective, and it's just up to the viewer to connect those dots. So and that's the nature of when you're injecting these other storylines into the story, is you have to take away things from our main character.
Yeah.
Who
do you? Because we haven't dealt with the Hobbit at all in this book, hardly.
Right.
Or in this movie.
Bilbo has. I mean, he gets the cool moments with the spiders and in Mirkwood, but yeah, post them leaving the Elven Kingdom, like Bilbo gets kind of sidelined in the back half of this movie, but we'll get there. So yeah, we basically are just left to assume that, oh yeah, it's because of this party, and we don't get to see Bilbo finding that stuff out. We just hear about it from the elves because we need to give them something to talk about that relates to the main thrust of the plot.
But also, what we've seen canonically in these movies, Legolas can drink anyone under the table.
Right.
Literally, Gimli falls under the table. And he's like, oh, I feel a little bit on my fingertips. And like, just demolishing. Never party with Legolas. Never play.
No.
What are they drinking?
So,
what are elves drinking?
This is my big problem with it too. And I know what Alex is going to say, and I friggin' hate it.
I have thoughts.
Hold the phone. It's awful because they should be able to handle it. and they don't because it's a special wine for this special event.
No, it's not. Here's what it is.
It's Four Loko, baby.
You just mentioned it. So we have this hierarchical structure in elven society where Thranduil and Legolas and the ruling class are these Quenya elves who have been touched by the light of the two trees, right? Meaning they are more powerful, they are stronger, they are closer
That's not how
to that
Tolkien
ideal.
wrote it.
Yes, it is. That's literally what it is.
That's what he says?
Yes.
Because these stupid Sylvan elves don't have tolerance?
The Sylvan elves have never seen the light of the two trees. Therefore, they are lesser in physical prowess, in knowledge and skills. That's just how it is. So these subordinate, elves that are just working this job like, at the place where the barrels come in, they're going to be Sylvan elves. So they don't have the same fortitude and tolerance to alcohol that we see Quenya elves have. We haven't seen, Legolas is a Quenya elf. So, or a descendant from them. So that's where I believe the explanation lies, is that they actually probably could more easily get drunk because they're not of the same ilk.
Alex, make sure you don't pull a hamstring next time you stretch that hard, okay there, buddy?
Look, somebody's got to defend this movie, okay?
No, I trust me. The next scene I will defend with my life because besides the two randomly placed GoPro shots, which
so weird and out of place. So weird and out of place.
Even in the theater, I was like, was that a GoPro? So strange. Other than that, I'm about this scene because besides the 5 minutes of killing spiders, it's been a little bit of a slow movie. So I'm okay with this daring escape, and orcs coming in and craziness. I'm about it. But yeah, it's just but you don't even show the elves getting drunk. They're just you just see them kind of pass down what? Yeah. Where's my key? And I was like, oh, this is, even in the extended version, I was like, oh, I thought they would show this more or something, or show the party upstairs or something like that, but they really don't.
Yeah, the reason I don't like the barrel sequence, as fun as it is, and in the theater it was fun seeing it in 3D, is again, it just takes away coolness from Bilbo. The reason that they escape is because of the aid of the elves and killing these orcs, as opposed to that was an ingenious thing of Bilbo and seeing Bilbo, ride the barrels and stuff.
Yeah.
It just takes away coolness from a main character and puts it into Legolas doing a pirouette on the tops of dwarf heads, which I know it's
so
cool.
Stupid. I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah. Can we talk about Bomber, his moment? Where he just goes full superhero mode. And
he goes full Sonic the Hedgehog with I don't know. Okay, one, there's two fallacies. One, where did he get the swords that he just pops out with?
Right.
And then two, after he's done being a little, poof ball of death, which I'm about, why is there just an extra barrel that he hops back into? Where did he just get the extra barrel? He's just an extra barrel. I was oh, okay, whatever. But I do love it. I think there's some really cool stuff here. But also when you see elves dying to these orcs, and I'm just wait, what? Is Legolas that much more powerful than all of these other elves?
Yeah, I think I'm fine with that. I think that is a symptom of kind of the Lord of the Rings thing where we just see Legolas being such a badass, and he's the only elf we really see being a badass, besides in the Last Alliance sequences and Helm's Deep, which the elves are at in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Elves are not all super powered. They're great at fighting, and they're probably some of the best fighters because they just have hundreds and hundreds of years to train and become perfection of anything they want to, really. But orcs are deadly and orcs are, nasty. So it's I think I'm okay with seeing some elves get taken out. Otherwise it would be just oh, orcs aren't a threat, but we know that they are. So
yeah. Yeah, it's always the numbers of orcs that have been their threat thing, but yeah, I like this scene. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think but that's the thing, is that the first movie does take itself very seriously, and this movie wants more of these lighthearted, adventurous moments, and this is one of them, and that's where these tonal clashes come in, where it's you want the fun from the Hobbit book, but you want the self-seriousness of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and they don't mesh very well. But I like this scene. I think it's a lot of fun. I think, them like tossing the axe back and forth to each other is great. You get like the chemistry of the dwarves and everything. And I like that Thorin saves Legolas' life. He saves his life. That orc is about to get him in the back, and he throws that sword, and we get a call back later for that. And so I think that's a good little Thorin redemption moment where he just got imprisoned by these elves.
Right.
But he knows, like, he has a prejudice against them, but he knows that they are good beings, and like he doesn't want them to die.
They're
he just
not
doesn't
orcs.
like them. Yeah, they're not orcs. And so like he sacrifices, like that's a big thing. Like that's the whole half of this movie is like they don't have weapons after this. So he sacrifices his only weapon and makes like their entire company basically defenseless after this by doing that. So I think that's a pretty underrated moment, is that like him saving Legolas's life with a hell of a axe throw.
And this is probably the last for this film. This is the last like good moment we'll see Thorin have.
Yes,
I think it's a little bit downhill from here.
Yeah, he really sucks.
The closer he gets to Erebor,
oh, he's the
really
worst.
And then we see throughout this sequence as well, Toriel just being completely enamored with Keeley, and he gets shot with that Morgul shaft we talked about. And
he gets the shaft.
He completely gets the shaft.
He does get the shaft.
He doesn't even get to go to Erebor later. It's so
Shaft.
sad.
Shaft. Oh no!
Flash. Sorry.
It is, but it made me think of that too. That's really funny.
And we get kind of a double thing where Toriel gets distracted, and then Legolas saves her.
Right.
And then, like at the end, when they, the dwarves escape, Toriel saves Legolas, and then we get that whole sequence with the aforementioned orc being taken in and questioned by Thranduil, and just more amazing acting by Lee Pace and this orc, and we get more hints of like, oh, Sauron is coming and he's gonna kill you all. The lands will be covered in darkness. We'll have many of these peppered throughout here, and then we get the amazing line, "You said you would free him," and he says, "I did. I freed him of his head."
Yeah,
which is so good.
He just works so well, but I do love the fact that like. I like the chemistry that Orlando Bloom and Lee Pace have, because like just right when he cuts his head, I was like, and he just got it. He's like, why would you do that? He says it so casually. Like, yeah, Orlando Bloom is not his beautiful young self anymore, but I think his acting is still. Oh, when you put Orlando Bloom in the right thing, he's good. Will Turner, he's good. Yeah. Legolas, he's good. And so like, when you put him in the right thing, he works really well, and he works really well as Legolas. And so when he's just like holding the orc, he's like, why would you do that?
Just nonchalantly,
just so nonchalant. It works so well. And but like also like, just Toriel, he's like, you like killing orcs. And it's just like that whole scene is so melodramatic. It's so much, but Lee Pace really makes it work, and I love him for it.
So I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about, we kind of lightly skipped over because it's really not that important, but I think is it Bolg who's like, oh, we can't go in there because that's where all the elves are, but then they still decide to storm they
like go around, and they're right there on the border where it's just, I don't know. Yeah,
it's like a really weird reason to like, oh, well, we can't do this in the story yet, so we're just gonna stop, but then we'll come back and do this.
Because where the barrels come out is like, right there. It's not probably a separate part from the Elven Kingdom, so it's like, but they needed to be there for the scene, so
whatever.
I don't know. It was strange, but I do like going back to that orc is just, everybody in that scene is just
killing it.
Just soap opera, and I love it. He's so good. He's like, this is my moment. I'm going to take it. And even if I'm unrecognizable, people are going to remember me. Because I feel like he is like the one orc that's like in makeup, and it works.
That has lines. Yeah,
that has lines, and it's so good. He looks great. He looks demented, and it's awesome.
Yeah. So then we have them finally getting out of the barrels, and meeting our
out of the barrels into the bard.
Nice.
There you go. Tolkien should have went with that.
Yep.
They meet our boy Bard, the Bargeman, and interesting take on Bard here. We'll get much more into him in our next episode because he's prominently featured. Him? I mean,
I wish.
Are you? Do we have a
line to Luke Evans? Can we please?
Yeah. We actually might.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
I think Luke Evans is another guy that is extremely underrated as an actor.
Right. Well, he doesn't think so. Sorry.
Luke Evans doesn't think so?
Yeah, no. Sorry.
What was that about getting
tell
on?
him I think he's great too because I think he's great in this. I think he's the perfect Gaston.
Is he Gaston?
Yeah, in the live action Beauty and the Beast, he was awesome. He worked really well, and then I think even in movies like Dracula Untold, there's moments I'm like, oh wow, he's going for it, and I respect him.
Oh sure.
And I love that. I love him in this part, and this is another Ken Stott moment where you thank God for Balin when he's like, oh, I bet you've got a lovely wife at home, and he's like, I did, and Balin's acting right there is like, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's so great. And meanwhile, Dwalin's like, oh, can we hurry up with the niceties? I'm like, shut up, dude. You are not getting out of this. He will wipe you out 1v13 right now if he wanted to.
And no wonder people hate dwarves because of the way that they're acting.
Right?
I'm not advocating for racism. I'm just saying they're not good house guests.
Yeah, at least I'd hate Dwalin, that's for sure.
Totally.
That's one of the things I think. Yeah, Balin is probably my favorite of the dwarves, and it's because they portray him as he's the oldest, he's the wisest, he's a good warrior, and he's seen his fair share of battle, but he understands, he has more empathy than all of the other dwarves, and I think that's why they sort of play up his relationship with Bilbo in this adaptation, which I enjoy, because in the book, he was just
insinuated.
Yes, but Balin was just the lookout, and but he was the one that Bilbo connected with most in the book. Mm-hmm. They play that up to the 10th degree, which I think really works here. And Ken Stott is just such a great actor, so he's able to pull that off.
Very, very good.
Well, we get Bard reluctantly agreeing to deliver them to Lake Town. We see him cook up a smart idea with barrels.
Yeah.
Also, right? A lot of barrel work here.
But before that,
we
have the whole. I love the scene where they got to pay him, and I think it's Glowin who's refusing to give up his coin, and then we get the moment where they're sailing through the mist and this sort of ice floating on the lake, and as they pass through and the mist clears, they see. Not for the first time, but up close for the first time, the Lonely Mountain. And we get that amazing shot, which is one of many of those kinds of panning, everybody coming into frame shots.
Yeah.
And he's like, take my money. And then it cuts to Martin Freeman, who it's implied he was the one who didn't put his coins in. But Glowin's like, take all my money. I don't care.
Love it.
So that's before we get the whole barrel Part 2 sequence.
Fair.
Yeah, and Thorn being like, oh, he's going to kill us on these waters. Stop talking. Just shut up for a second.
It's embarrassing.
Bilbo's sneaking you out of prison. He's like, what are you doing? Are you mad? Shut up. You guys are all in jail, and you're not in jail. Even if you get recaptured, at least he's trying something. Just shut up for a second. God.
He's a control freak.
He is. It's just man, just trust somebody. Oh my gosh. It's the frustrating moments. I know that dwarves are supposed to be hard-headed and stuff like that, but sometimes they overdo it a few times in these movies where you genuinely don't want these guys to succeed. You're just you know what? Stay 100 years in the Elvish prison. I don't care. As long as Bilbo gets out, I'm good.
Yeah.
Is that where we're ending today? Is right before the worst character in movie history shows up?
I think we'll save We'll save
Worst character?
We'll save the introduction of that unibrowed man for next
Is
week.
he really the worst character?
Yes.
Oh, it sounds like Ben has a lot of
I have
opinions.
so much to talk about when it comes to that man that will not be named till next week.
All right. I think that is a good cliffhanger, unlike my opinion of the cliffhanger of this movie, for us to leave off until we rejoin this conversation next week. It's, as always, gentlemen, my pleasure to speak to you about such things, including Lord of the Rings. Ben, is there anything you're working on right now that you want people to know about, or what's like a Patreon thing that you're up to?
Yeah, I just revamped my Patreon, guys. It's the starting level is $5, and you get movie reviews, trailer reactions, a weekly Sunday show where I talk about pop culture and all that good stuff. So join over at the Patreon, patreon.com/thebengoddard.
So good. I am at Coffee. I'm selling seats to a TTRPG 2-shot that I think there's either at this point 2 or 3 seats available, and we're going to get started with session 0 on January 16th. So it's going to be 3 Mondays technically, and we're going to make sure the time works for everybody. It's going to be it's not D&D, but it will be fun. But if you want to give that a check out, the link will be in the liner notes, but it's Jessica Lynn Verdi's coffee page, KO-FI. Alexander, what are you doing?
Well, you can find me over on twitch.tv/Solkatu, SOLKATTU. I'm usually playing, I don't know, Magic the Gathering or Minecraft. Sometimes I'm reading Lord of the Rings and talking about Lord of the Rings over there. So,
Ooh, I want to go on that.
yeah, make sure
I
you
want
tune
to
in
do
there.
that.
I want to go to there, as Tina Fey would say on 30 Rock.
I want to go to there. Is that what it's from? Everyone
is.
says that now. Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. She changed our dialogue.
30 Rock is still hilarious. Like,
Yeah.
and I do love that, like, her and Alec Baldwin are still like really best friends. Like, I just love that.
And
Just makes me
honestly,
happy.
it was so cool that she knew that Tracy Morgan was brilliant and that he was underutilized in general. She went, nope, this guy is great and needs to be used, and it worked out for the best.
And I think that's Donald Glover's first appearance.
Is he in that?
Wow.
He's just like it's a great joke. Make sure everyone looks up Donald Glover 30 Rock, because it's like just a cutaway joke and it works so perfectly.
Oh, I can't wait. We'll have to look
Yeah.
it up. That's great. Alex, what are the different ways people can interact with our podcast here?
Well, they can follow us on Twitter at PodOfTheRings. They can go and check out our Instagram at POTRPod. If you'd like to support the show financially and pledge at one of a few different tiers and get some cool benefits, you can go to patreon.com/PodOfTheRings, or you can just check us out on our website, PodcastoftheRings.com. Get links to all that stuff right there.
Make sure you do it, guys, because I am not cheap. I'm like Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 2. For every movie, I'm asking more money, talking about how bad my back hurts. It's a whole process. They almost replaced me with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's a whole thing.
You know what though? If we can find a better replacement for you, like Jake Gyllenhaal, we'll let you know. But honestly, at this point, we're just. I think what's going to happen is that you're going to be our third co-host. But I didn't say that.
Oh,
I
I'll contact
know.
my agent and get those renegotiations.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
We'll do lunch.
We still have 3 episodes to make
Yeah,
a decision. But
exactly.
We'll do lunch.
Yeah.
My
No
people
pressure,
call your
Ben.
people. Yeah.
You're not. You're not going to play con, but you're going to play con.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Until next week. Wait. So long and farewell. What do we say, Alex?
So long, farewell.
I was like, wait, are we the Von Trapp children?
We are. How did we say goodbye? I don't remember.
It's a
Well-
dangerous business going at your door.
And until then,
Mayor Roads meet again.
there we go. I like that. That's good. All right. Bye, guys.